we'll go ahead and get started.
Yes, he's here.
Like Athena said, today's topic is genealogy and ancestry. So John Payne will be doing a big presentation around all of that. And I wanted to bring that into our yoga practice as well. So we'll be doing a little bit of meditation around sort of looking into our past, whether or not we know what it is yet. Maybe we'll find out more answers in the second half. And really discerning not only what lessons we can draw from our past, but just sort of taking a moment to honor how our past has led us to this moment where we are. And that can be like as far back generationally as you can even imagine. The actions that those ancestors took have directly led you to this point, in my opinion. So we'll just play with that idea a little bit. And accordingly, we'll do a bit of twisting to look back into our past. So let's find a nice tall seat. Planting both feet down on the floor. Letting the eyes close. Turning your awareness inward. Taking a few moments here just to arrive. To notice body, to notice breath. To notice the mind if it wanders as you close your eyes. And begin to focus your awareness, allowing the breath to deepen, allowing for a sense of expansion and spaciousness. To land fully here in the present. Taking note of any qualities here in this moment. The quality of the space around you. Of all of the different information coming in from your senses. Taking note of where you are here and now. As you feel ready, extend the arms up to the sides and reach them up overhead. Exhale, drop the hands down to the knees, curling the body forward, tucking chin toward chest. Draw in through the belly button. Inhale the arms back up. This time exhale, draw the elbows down alongside the body and find a gentle back bend, pressing the palms behind you as you open the heart. Inhale back up. And one more time, exhale, hands to knees, round forward. Inhale back up. And this time, exhale, drop the right hand outside of the left knee, releasing the left hand to the side of the chair, just behind you in any way that makes sense to you. Take a moment there, pressing the left knee out into the hand, pressing the hand into the knee. Broadening the collarbone, bringing the gaze perhaps all the way back over the shoulder, just being aware of what feels good for your neck. beginning to look behind us in this very physical sense as we turn our internal awareness to the past. Inhale the arms back up. And exhale to twist to the other side. Again, pressing knee into hand, hand into knee, letting the other arm just rest as it will. Maybe bringing the gaze behind you, just finding the right depth for your body. Inhale the arms back up. And exhale, let the arms go. From here, we'll come up to standing, if that's comfortable for you. Just giving yourself just a little bit of space. We'll come into a breathing practice called breath of joy. So you can make this as vigorous or as gentle as you'd like. So just be aware of that. But it involves taking a deep breath in and then a ha breath from deep in the belly. And that's accompanied by arm movement. So I'll do it once first and you can see what it's like. Go. Ha! So whenever you're interested in trying, you can start. Ha! Ha! So again, this can be gentle or vigorous. Ha! Couple more times. Ha! Ha! It's okay if you don't get it just right. Just go along in any way. Ha! Once more. Ha! And then just come back up and pause there. Noticing any tingling or feeling of energy, vigor, vitality in the body. And taking a moment to let some of that settle and ground. And then we'll do one more practice similar to that. Thank you for indulging me today. So we'll bring the feet a little bit wider, and we'll use that same breath. And even if it feels silly, then it's laughter yoga, and let that be okay. So this will be more of a twisting practice. So we'll begin by just letting the arms swing from side to side, picking up as much momentum with that as you'd like. Really letting the arms hang heavy, like you were wearing a grandpa's coat as a small child, and the coat sleeves were just hanging long. And then maybe as you gain a little more vigor, as much as you'd like, as one hand reaches one side, ha, 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 ha. Couple more rounds. Ha, 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 ha. And then slowly let that movement wind down. Coming back to standing. And letting all of that settle. If you'd like to take a seat to let that settle, that's fine too. Taking a moment there. Come back to our seat for a moment. I know, it can be pretty invigorating, so. But it's kind of enlivening in theory, right? So, as you feel all of that begin to settle down, we'll come back to our tall seat with both feet rooting down into the floor. Taking just a moment to observe any effects of your practice thus far, maybe noticing the heart rate or the pace of the breath, any lightheadedness or whatever else from that practice. And then feel a little more firmly into the feet. Taking note of the sensation of the feet nestled in socks and shoes. Feel the hands resting down on the thighs. Feeling into a sense of rooting, grounding. Surrendering your weight to the earth. Returning to that idea of finding yourself here firmly in the present. And now bringing your awareness to the past. Taking a moment to imagine back as many generations as you possibly can, whether you know your lineage or not. Imagining 10,000 years ago, what your ancestors may have been doing, 5,000 years ago, whatever feels realistic for you to consider. Just taking note of how every step, every choice, every action they made has brought you here, rooted to this moment. Taking this moment to acknowledge and honor the lives that they've lived, even bringing that a little closer to the present. Maybe drawing to mind one elder who has shaped your life, perhaps a grandparent or a parent. Taking note of any feeling that comes up as you acknowledge and honor this person. Maybe connecting to a sense of loving kindness, of love and appreciation. Letting that permeate through your being. Letting that bring a sense of lightness to the body. From there, as you feel ready, inhaling to sweep the arms back up overhead. And this time, exhale and releasing the hands behind the back. If they don't quite want to go that far, then you can just bring the hands to either side of the small of the back. But you might need to scoot forward in your chair in order to make that happen. As you interlace the hands, find a sense of almost trying to pull the fingers apart, letting that deepen the openness across the chest. Maybe taking a moment to roll the shoulders back first, to really feel into that space. Let's take a few moments there. Opening the heart, sending the breath right into that heart space. As you feel ready, inhale the arms back up overhead. Once again, knees or hands to knees, curling the body forward. Inhaling back up. And from here we have a couple of choices, letting the arms rest. We'll find a lunge position. So maybe that means you take it from your chair, just extending one leg behind you. Or if you feel like you would prefer a little more challenge and balance challenge, then you can find that same position, holding to the back of your chair. So whichever option suits your needs. We'll take a few moments there, finding a sense of pressing down through that back heel, lengthening the back of the leg. Just noticing where you feel a sense of lengthening, where you feel a sense of strengthening. And both of those qualities be present here. Again, feeling into the connection of the feet against the earth, that downward grounded sense of using your strong legs. And as you feel satisfied, step the legs together, keeping one hand on the chair, maybe coming up to the standing position now if you're not there already. Now we'll take a moment just to feel the weight in both feet. Now grounding the weight over into the, let's use your right hands are next to the chair. So grounding the weight over into the left foot, we'll lift the right knee high. Or maybe the toes just stay in contact with the mat. Maybe the knee lifts all the way up. Just finding whatever position makes sense for your body. From there, we'll bring the left hand outside of the right knee. Just like we did when we were seated, press the knee out into the hand in toward the knee. Twisting to gaze over toward the right, maybe even all the way back over the right shoulder. Invite the spine to lengthen here. And exhale, feel into that twist. We'll hold here for one more moment. You can even kind of cup the fingers underneath the thigh to help support that leg if it gets a little bit tiring. And then exhale. Let that go. Shaking it out, letting it go. And then we'll either come back to the chair for our lunge or just bend the face the other direction. From there, stepping the opposite foot back. So I think that might be your left foot. Finding the lunge on this side. Bending that front knee as deeply as you'd like to find the right level of challenge, of strengthening. And reaching through the back heel as much as you'd like to find the sense of lengthening you desire. And take a few moments there, feeling into the pose. Back to stand tall. Letting that go. Here with the left hand supported by the chair, we'll bring the weight over into the right foot. Now same choice here, maybe the toes just kickstand down on the ground and the knee bends. Maybe the knee lifts a little higher. Find a sense of lengthening through the crown of the head. And then draw the right hand outside that knee, really firmly pressing those two together. Let that pressing together at the knee be what twists you open to the left. Taking a few moments here, feeling strength come to the body, feeling lightness of breath support you. As you feel satisfied, gently set that back down, letting that go. Now one more standing exercise. A couple choices here. If you'd like the more challenging version, you can just bring both hands to the back of the chair. Or if you'd like, I'll show the slightly less challenging version first. So option one is to just be seated in the chair with the knees stacked over the ankle, to lean forward and just lift the hips a few inches and set them back down. So we'll do that a few times. Or a slightly more vigorous option is similar idea, squats. Either using the balance of the chair or freeing the hands. So we'll take a few rounds like that, whichever option you choose. Inviting the legs to be strong, feeling the bottoms of the feet connecting you here. A few more times. This can really help build stability for balance. So if falling is ever a fear, a few of these every day could really help. Let's do 2 more. And then let that go. And we'll come back to our chairs. Just a moment there, sitting tall, both feet planted down on the mat, stacking knees over ankles, letting the eyes close and taking another moment just to notice any softness or ease that has come as a result of your practice thus far. And then as your next inhale comes, slowly draw the right knee in towards you. And then exhale, press the shin into the hand as you round the nose toward the knee. Inhale, draw the knee in toward the belly, taking that into almost a bit of a back bend, broadening the collarbone. Exhale, round nose toward knee. Pressing shin into hand, straightening the arms. Inhale, knee in toward belly as you broaden the collarbone. Exhale, set that foot back down. And inhale, draw the other knee in. Exhale, press shin to hands, rounding nose toward knee. Inhale, drawing the leg in as you open the heart. One more time, exhaling, rounding forward. Inhaling to open. And exhale, set that foot down. Here, let's draw the right ankle in, crossing ankle over thigh. And then flex that foot like you're pulling your toes in towards your shin. Take your right hand to the right knee and gently press. Now here, find a sense of pulling the heel in towards you. So you're not really actually moving the heel, but just sort of using that as a way to engage the back of the leg. Now come to sit tall, keeping some of that engagement in the leg. And then with a nice tall spine, hinge forward a few inches, just until you feel the right level of sensation for your body. Take a few moments there, feeling into that hip. Coming back up. Releasing that leg, maybe rolling the ankle a few times. And we'll switch legs. Again, toes draw towards shin, heel draws in toward the body. Left hand gently presses down, letting that lengthen the spine. Maybe from there, exhaling to hinge forward just slightly. Finding the right place for your body. Slowly coming back up. And releasing that leg, maybe rolling that ankle. And setting that foot back down. Coming back to your tall seat, let the eyes close. And for one last moment, draw your attention inward. Returning to that awareness of ancestry, of past, your connection to the present here. Take just a moment looking back into the past in this way to draw forth any lessons or learnings that you might wish to pass on to next generations. Or maybe acknowledging the ways in which you have already done so through children, grandchildren, or any other younger ones in your life. Pausing here to acknowledge and honor your role as an ancestor, as an elder, as someone whose actions, choices, thoughts will be passed down, leading to the present moment for those to come. And from that place of honoring, I invite you to draw the hands together in front of the heart. And if you feel so called, gently bow forward in connection to those that have come before, to ourselves, and to our futures. Namaste.
What does that mean? What did you say?
Namaste. So in yoga we say namaste, and it means the part of me that is present in this moment that exists in all of my vital humanity acknowledges that you also have that part of yourself. So it's like just a moment to be like, hey, I'm human, you're human, we're alive, we're here together. Let's remember that we are all on the same page in that way. So, thanks for asking. So, I will go see if John is someone to be found.
This could be, this yoga could be like rear view mirror yoga, you know, because you have.
It's true. Actually, I've read that, maybe they didn't mean it quite as literally as this, but I've read that looking over one's shoulder, like to back out, is like one of the leading causes of back injuries.
Really?
Yeah, because people are so tight there, so really
yeah.
practicing and improving your range of motion in those twists.
Oh, interesting.
It's definitely very beneficial. So.
They say you can't totally rely just on the rear view. You know, you have to check it, but you have to, there's still that blind spot that you miss.
It's
so
true.
That's why we turn back, but I didn't know it caused injuries.
But now there's those backup cameras anyway, which
Right.
is good I'm getting a little bit of a soapbox here, I'm sorry, but it's good in a way because it probably does prevent accidents, but like the more that we remove the need to move our bodies in these different ways, like the more injury prone we will be ultimately. Like even if we only do this to twist, like that's still moving your body in that way. Now with a backup camera, maybe you'll never move in that way.
Yeah.
So.
But I still don't think you can totally rely on that either.
No.
You know, I mean, I don't.
Human eyes, more keen than any technology.
I suppose we can get started.
Sorry, John, we were talking about other long-lost family.
Awesome. That is exactly the mindset that I want you to be in, is taking interest in the long-lost family members. There's obviously so much to go through when it comes to family history research. I won't be able to cover it all in the 30 minutes provided, but if I can stoke those fires and get your minds moving in the right direction, because what I'm really asking you to do is not so much to do family history, is to become a detective.
Oh.
And I say that only half kidding. I've been doing family research for my own family for about 17 years, since my big ones were little ones. And initially started out thinking family history. It's like, oh, this is my family history. This is me. This is mom, dad, mom's parents, dad's parents. That's simple. Or even get a little bit more complicated and blow it up a little bit more. Still, that's simple, right? We can do that with a notepad, paper, pencil, just keep up with everything. Truth is, when you start doing family history, it's going to look a little bit more like this. And pretty quickly, it's going to become even larger. I overwhelm you this way to bring up that with computers, you have a good option. There's a lot of free software out there. Family Tree Maker used to be the big one, and it's kind of lent itself to new incarnations. MyHeritage has a freeware version. Legacy has a freeware version. Most of the ones that have free versions have paid versions. They give you extra maps, a few extra tips and tricks. My advice to people is to go ahead and enjoy the free stuff as long as you can. I've been working on this enough that I've got about 5,000 people in my family history. I'm using the freeware version of the software. Now, the freeware version doesn't upload everything to the internet the way some of the paid versions do, but I don't need that right now. Now, once you find your software, some of them are very intuitive. They don't require a lot of learning curve. Some require a little bit more, but you want to have something that makes it easy to add information to. Let's see if I want to edit details on someone. You can see I've got the option, general information, first name, last name, birth, death, where were they buried. I can actually fill this in later, I'll tell you more about that, but you have the ability to add facts. If they were in the census during particular periods of their life, you can add that. If they were in the military, you can add that. You can add notes so that you can refer to things later. You can add citations if you have a particular document you want to add, and this will help keep up with everything. Most of the family tree products play well with one another. They will export to something called a GEDCOM file. If you think about image files as being JPEGs, GEDCOM is just a specific type of file for family history research. That means that if you have a sister in Nebraska that's doing some family history, you can share with her. Also means she can share with you. I do print out a lot of records, which I'll tell you more about in a moment, but if you're going to be using the computers to keep up with your software, you might as well keep up with documents. It's great for saving photographs, it's great for saving copies of the census records with the person's name on it so that you can refer back to it. Believe me, the more family history work that you do, you'll find that you refer back to a lot of the same documents. And what I learned a while back was, when I started out, okay, I've got all this stuff on Bobby Payne. So I just started naming them in sequence. So that way I can go back to them when I need them. Problem is, you've got all these Bobby Paynes, and of course you're going to have lots of other family members. If you need a specific document, you're going to have a heck of a time. Also, they're all named Bobby Paynes, but there might be 3 Bobby Paynes in your family. How do you tell which goes to which? The better file name that you give it now, the easier it will be to find the record later. So here you've got a Bobby Payne born 1922, vital statistics information, Bobby Payne born 1988, Mount Vernon Signal article. So now I can go back through and know, instead of taking 20 minutes trying to find a file, I'm finding it in just a minute. Files in doubt, update your file. By the way, working with computers, the other thing that is great about computers, it's easy to back up information. Those JetCom files, back them up onto a flash drive. Email them to yourself. That way, if this computer catches fire right now, I haven't lost everything. And believe me, things like that will happen when it is most painful for you to lose that information. Let's see if this is actually going to. And you know how I told you that I wanted everybody to become a detective? It's exactly what I had to do. As I'm doing my family history research, I started with, and you'll see on this sheet, always start with yourself. You know the most about yourself, and the fact is, eventually, it's going to get to a point where your family is going to want to know about your life. Start with yourself, start with the people that you know, and then branch outward. Reach out to your living family members, get everything that you can before you even go into looking for public records. And here I'll kind of go through a journey of one of my family members to tell you about some of the public records out there. My dad's Robert Payne, his father was Russell Payne. I've known that all my life. Talked to some family members, and the reason I didn't know my great-grandfather is that he died in 1919. His wife died in 1916 during childbirth, left my grandfather, all of his brothers and sisters, orphans. You know, 1919 is a long time ago. And about 15 years ago, I was given this photo. This is my grandfather and his brothers and sisters at the time. This is Jacob, Martha, and I'm told that this is Andy Payne. So I'm doing my family history. I want to find out more about this individual. By the way, I was told that Andy is Jacob's father. First thing I did is I got in the car, went to the cemetery. I know where my grandfather was buried. Turns out my great-grandfather and his wife, they were also buried there. Here you can see Martha and son. That was the child that died during childbirth with her. Andy was nowhere to be found. I went from one end of that cemetery to the other. Now the good news is, this gave me birth and death dates for Jacob and Martha, which I didn't initially have. And you will find as you go through your family history, especially the generations before ours, people tend to get very close to one another. You know, there's even a lot of family cemeteries as you go back. Then I went to my local public library, which I'm quite fond of. Went to the Madison County Public Library website, and we have subscriptions for our customers to Heritage Quest Online and MyHeritage. I went through there to search census records, absolutely free. You can save those census images to your computer, refer back to them later. And I say you will go back to them later because not only do they have the parents, all the children, but you'll start to find out, especially in previous generations, that you've got aunts, uncles, cousins, people who weren't even married at the time that were neighbors and might have had something to do with the reason the kids eventually got married, are all going to be on those same sheets of census. I was able to find Jacob and Martha along with the children. Got the names of all of my grandfather's brothers and sisters. Approximate ages. So that was helpful. And from that record we can estimate the ages of Joseph, Martha, the several children, make sure that they kind of coincide with the cemeteries. Because, you know, Jacob's a common name, Martha's a common name. We want to make sure that we're looking at the right record. So you have to do a little bit of best guessing. It's like, this all fits. Russell's there, Jacob, Martha's there, the ages match up. Tells me that Jacob's father was born in Kentucky. That's very helpful. Fortunately, he was also born in the same county in Kentucky. That's even more helpful. Jacob was born in 1878. So the next search I did was in the 1880 census. The reason I did that is, you know, he was born in 1878. 2 years later, I expect him to live with his parents. It's a good guess. So I used the search for Jacob Payne. I used 1878. I gave it a plus or minus 1 year estimate because census records are not absolutely perfect. As people get older, they might fudge on how old they are. The person who gives the information might be off by a couple of years on their wife or the children. And, you know, that happens. You have to use a little bit of judgment. I knew he lived in Rockcastle County, or at least that's what I was guessing, and I was correct. And here I can see Jacob's parents listed as Andrew and Martha. So now I know who, and actually that's supposed to be Sarah. Andrew and Sarah, I got ahead of myself. Andrew lived in Rockcastle County and was born in Tennessee in about 1828, and he worked as a farmer. So now I'm going to go back even farther. Went back to about 1860, not quite to where he was a child, but I wanted to see a little bit more about Andy. Here's another thing that you're going to find. You may not find it on the first family you look at, but you will find it at some point. They didn't always get the names right. My family is Payne. There's a few different spellings for Payne, and I've seen all of them. Whoever wrote this down thought he heard them say painter instead of Payne. I don't know why it wasn't there. And they abbreviated Andy or Andrew to And. But I was able to find them by looking for the sons' names. I found Calvin, and by finding Calvin, I was able to find Calvin's parents. Calvin is one of the older sons of Andrew, and I found that out from a previous, I found that out from the 1880 census records. So now I can still see that he was, again, a farmer. I can also see a little bit about how much his land was worth. He wasn't a rich man, but he also wasn't the poorest man in the county. All the information's kind of building up. Go back to 1950 and 1940. As you go farther back in time, the census asks fewer questions. You can look on that 1940 census and you see it. Very hard to read the names, but that's actually Moses Payne, who it turns out is Andrew Payne's father, which I was able to find out from the 1850 census. Now, this says Moses Payne, and it gives tally marks for how many children, how many adults of a certain sex of a certain age live in the house. Still helpful, not as helpful as later census. But here I've got Andrew, the ages match up from the previous census, plus or minus a year. Again, I've got the affirmation that he was born in Tennessee. Found out that Andrew's father, Moses, was born in North Carolina, so that could be helpful information later on. But everything builds up. Also now know that Andrew, or AJ, as I'm finding him in other records, had a mother, Nancy, who was born around all those should be 1850 and 1840. In 1850 and 1940. Worked on this yesterday, and I suppose I've not quite proofread it the way that I should. Okay, once I got all that information, I went out. I had a cousin who had just got Ancestry. She lent me her account So I was able to look up marriage records. I knew from talking to the county courthouse clerks that the Rockcastle County Courthouse burned up in 1873. So marriage records before that, you're not going to be able to find. However, before 1873, someone had indexed them and sent them to Frankfurt. So I was able to find out here, A.J. Payne married Sarah, tells the date, a little bit about the marriage, that they were married in Rockcastle County. And again, all this just builds up my available information on, this would be my grandfather's grandfather. One thing I wasn't able to find out, I went back to the 1910 census where I initially found my grandfather living with his great-grandfather. I went back through and I was not able to find AJ or Sarah. So I'm like, okay, they probably died before 1910, or they moved. Again, this is all detective work. I went through another service called newspapers.com. I used a 7-day free trial. And I spent way too much time during those 7 days looking up information. I was able to find a Mr. Andy Payne, May 10th, 1907, Mount Vernon Signal. That's the prominent newspaper in Rockcastle County. Still is. I was able to compare information. Jane Bloomer, used to be Jane Payne, a child of Moses Payne. Matilda, also a child of Moses Payne. Tells a little bit about his life. It also tells where he was buried, which that became a new riddle to uncover where he was buried. Also had information on his wife, it turns out, who died just a short time before him. And also, a good piece of news, I found out that my family line has a tendency to live to a ripe old age. But the burial took place in the old Payne graveyard, more recently known as the Willard graveyard. Now there's a book of cemeteries in Rockcastle County. Madison County also has cemetery books. We have, in Madison County, we have 2 for the surrounding cemeteries, 1 specifically for Richmond. We have 2 for the Berea Cemetery. And I'm currently working on the Madison Memorial Garden Cemetery. But the Rockcastle Cemetery book had no Willard graveyard listed at all. It did have a Payne cemetery, but it was all the way on the other side of the county. And since this article told me that the old Payne graveyard had been renamed, I made the supposition that that probably wasn't the same graveyard. In fact, I later found out that some grandchildren and great-grandchildren of these individuals had moved over to the other side of the county. So I kept digging. I also found out in the cemetery book that there was no one by the name of Willard that was buried in Rockcastle County. I thought that was very weird, considering it's a Willard burying ground. But what I did find in the Mount Vernon Signal was a listing for the Willard Farm. And since I found the Willard Farm, it said it was near Freedom Church, which I happened to have just went to. Freedom Church is the church nearest that first cemetery that I went to where my grandfather's buried, where my great-grandfather was buried. So I'm like, okay, I need to find out where this Willard Farm is. So I've got a property transfer, J.J. McCall, W.F. Monk. I note the date, the approximate date of the land transfer. Just went back to the courthouse. Went to the deeds, found the record of the transfer, which the deed records have a description of the property. And, it took a while to translate that deed because it's written in old, that old-timey script. I had to find out how long a pole was, how long a chain was, because that's how they measured distance on these old surveys. But once I did all the work, I found out, these are the two main cemeteries in that little corner of Rockcastle County. Old Freedom and New Freedom. This is the boundaries of the property transfer in that newspaper. This little star represents the corner of where the old Moses Payne place was. This other star represents where there's an old cemetery in the woods that happens to be behind the McKinney farm. So I went to talk to the McKinneys, found out that before Mrs. McKinney was a McKinney, she was a Payne. So, based on all the detective work, I decided this had to be where my grandfather's grandfather and grandmother were buried. Good chance Moses and his wife were buried there as well, but, I take one step at a time. Another resource, this is a free resource, and it is tremendously helpful. It's called Find a Grave. Again, start with the family members you're aware of. Sometimes people will have done the work for you and connected parents to the deceased, children to the deceased. But one of the things I did, since I did all that work, I found out that the cemetery was listed in Rockcastle County. It was called the Hensley Cemetery because one of the two existing tombstones happened to belong to a person that had owned it in 1930. His last name was Hensley. Everything else was fieldstones, or in other words, rocks. But since I was able to show within reason that that's where my ancestors were buried, I was able to add them, and I also went and added a description of the cemetery that included also known as. So now, future generations, future family members will be able to look up and know that that was the Payne graveyard or the Willard graveyard. Which, if you're going to do family history, if you have to do it for yourself, that's fine, but it's something that you should want to share with all of your families. There's also a plot twist. I went back to that original photo that I was given 15 years ago, and by looking at what I've already uncovered, found out that the ages of the children didn't match up with a person who had died in 1907. The little baby was actually born afterwards. So assuming that was not the ghost of my grandfather's grandfather, then I surmised that it was not actually Andy. And there's a good chance that it was actually Martha's father rather than Jacob's father that was in the picture. He'd actually lived until 1922. And after I made this decision, I continued working with MyHeritage, had actually talked to another member of the MyHeritage website, because they ask you to create accounts, and sometimes you can interact with other members. And that person's also related to me, though I'm not sure how. They had a picture of Andy and Sarah, which I'm assuming was close to the end of their days. Otherwise, I think they were getting ready for Halloween, because that's a wonderfully dismal photo, but now I at least have an idea what these ancestors look like. Who's already done some family history research?
My mother's done quite a bit. She's 97 now, she's still there. Genealogy.
Well, that's wonderful. I would say help her organize what she has and build upon it. Because if someone's done if someone has went through the effort, it's better to consolidate efforts rather than start over.
She got a lot of family history stories that she wrote up a book for all those kids. Gave it to us one Christmas. It had my kith and kin on the front. She had all the records that she had.
That is truly wonderful. I've recorded a few of my aunts and uncles' stories. I've got one aunt. She's got some stories. It's not entirely sure where the story begins and where the facts end. And you're going to find that out.
Poetic license.
Anytime you've got oral tradition, there's going to be a little bit of poetic license, and you may find out that some things don't quite pan out. But that's part of the adventure. But take advantage of all of the resources that you can. The county courthouses usually have deeds, wills, marriage licenses. The free services like we offer, a good place to get the census records, which, you know, for the most part, lays out every household in a particular county for that period, whether it's 1910, 1900, 1890 is hit and miss, 1880 on back. Of course, once you get to 1850 and before, you're only dealing with heads of household and the number of people in a particular house. Still helpful, but not as helpful. In 3 years, we're going to see the 1950 census show up. They hold this back to protect from too much information of living individuals being available publicly. But ideally, that information from 1950 is not going to be quite as useful to someone today, except it is useful for people who are doing family history. And that actually should be a very exciting year, because I know a lot of people in Rockcastle County that began to move to Ohio and other industrial centers during those periods. There's several paid sites out there, ancestry.com, newspapers.com. Fold 3 actually does military records, and you can actually see images of all of the pension record, well, a lot of the pension records, mustering records, attendance records for military units. A lot of these have 7-day, 14, 28-day free trials. Take advantage of them. If they are useful, and these companies know this, if they're useful, you're going to have to make a consideration whether to purchase a monthly subscription. And if they're doing their job right, you know, they're going to provide enough information to make that a reasonable purchase for you.
So what was the name of that military?
Fold3.com.
F-O-L-D?
F-O-L-D number 3.
Okay.
And it's also in your packet.
Oh.
There's a lot of free sites out there. And never discount Google. A good keyword search in Google, especially since you have lots of individuals, such as yourself, that might report on your own family history. And where the oldest individual that you know in your family history, another person that you've never even considered may also be related to that individual and has then done work both through their line downwards and through their line upwards, and you can find lots of information out there. And if they've done their work well, you can even find out what resources they use to find that information. I've got one family line in particular in mind. I was very fortunate to find someone who had researched the Browns. Browns is a very common name. It's hard to get terribly far in the Browns, except for the fact that this person who was related to my uppermost Brown, they had found some resources that connected them to their trip across to England. And in England, they had money. Great thing about families when they have money is they keep better records. People write about them. And it turns out, even though the person who came across the pond to America might have been the black sheep, He might have been the one that was convinced, like, you know, we're doing all right out here. You should go explore the new world. And then they became a dirt farmer for 7 generations, which is what happened to some of mine. But they went back, once they went far enough back to find the English ancestors, turns out there were some very wealthy individuals, some honest-to-goodness knights, sheriffs of prominent lands. One person got hanged. And it went all the way back to where the Browns were the De Bruins. I thought that was fascinating. Now, I haven't went back to check all of these, mainly because I've kind of been working on other lines, and I was just thankful to have these names. It made me feel good to go back to 1201 family line. But at some point, you're going to find that fortunate accident where you go back far enough to meet another family member from a common ancestor. It's where I found, through the Percivals that married into the Duns, I've got a Native American ancestry. Because we all have Native American ancestors, at least that's what we were all told as children. Do you all have any questions?
I've heard people have gone to, like the Mormon church, to get information and paid a lot of money, and it wasn't right, it wasn't very good.
Well, before you pay a lot of money for the information for the Mormon church, Ancestry partners with the Mormon church a lot, so that's a good resource. The Mormon church, they're genealogy crazy. They've spent a lot of their resources tracing family history. The good news is it gives us an advantage to use some of their resources. There's a family history center in Lexington, Tate's Creek and Man of War, if I remember correctly. You can go there for free. Now they may have services that they offer that are higher tier that cost, but there's a lot of services that they will offer for free. You just go to the building, sign in. If I remember correctly from what I've read, they have an interlibrary loan service. So if there's materials for your family that perhaps isn't in Lexington, but at one of their history centers, maybe in Georgia or Nebraska, they'll be able to send that book to Lexington. You'll be able to look at it there, find your information. If you're willing to do the driving, if you're willing to do the searching online, there is a wealth of information out there at this point, far beyond what was available when I started 17 years ago. I will say in Madison County, our library has some print materials. We have some of the cemetery books, some of the vital statistic books, some of the census in print. Hutchins Library at Berea College and EKU's library both have special collections, and they are far more expansive. In fact, I found out today that they have several shelves worth of print volumes of collected obituaries from Madison County. And as somebody who's worked in a library for 17 years, that is a tremendous asset. We're constantly asked, like, I'm trying to find an obituary for this person or that person. We send them to EKU's library, we send them to Hutchins. And now that I know that EKU's library has these volumes, they're all indexed. You can actually open straight to the page where that obituary is. And obituaries have so much information. They'll list typically the birth and death date, a lot of times the birth location, death location, whom they were married to, perhaps even major events in the person's life. It'll tell often who the children are, both living and deceased. It'll tell who they were married to. Sometimes it'll list grandchildren, great-grandchildren. And those obituaries can certainly open up your research to find out who those individuals are.
Do you think more of the universities would have that in other counties? Is that a common thing?
Where there are universities, they're going to have a lot more resources than your public libraries. That being said, a lot of the public libraries have expanded their history sections. Lincoln County Public Library has a room devoted to history. Pulaski County Public Library has a room devoted to history. It's worth visiting the libraries from where your families were. And often those librarians know what resources are out there that reflect information available to that county.
Since Madison County is so historical, maybe you could get a room like that with all this remodeling going on.
With the
in Madison
remodeling,
County.
we will have a history room.
Oh, good.
It still will not be as expansive as the college libraries. They have a larger budget and larger facilities specifically for that, but we will expand. We're also intending to expand our digital offerings. We've been collecting the Berea Citizen Mount Vernon Signal from about 2007 carrying forward. Those are available on the library's website as a digital download. Starting today, actually, I'll be uploading the marriage indexes, the first 2 books from Madison County, which covers the late 1700s to 1950. And as those other books are photographed and processed, there'll be text searchable copies of the other marriage indexes. So before you even go to the courthouses, you can see what marriages are found there. One other thing I want to leave you with, because I know I'm not the only one who does paper records. When I first started family history research, I photocopied everything I thought would be relevant. What I didn't have the forethought to do was to organize them. I've got lots of great information in there. I challenge anyone to find a specific piece of information quickly. So if you are going to collect paper copies of things, I would suggest something like an accordion fold, something that you can assign specific titles to. And then that's going to help you keep up with your records more efficiently. As I've found, you will reference those records. The more expansive your family history becomes, the more relevant looking back at the older records are going to be. Census records, you're going to find out neighbors were actually cousins, whether they were cousins at the time or their future cousins. It's hard to say, but good organization is a key to preventing frustration. And,
So should you use acid-free paper and like permanent inks for all your records so they won't fade eventually?
it can't hurt. I have not gotten that route yet, but then again, I've been keeping a lot of things digitally and backing them up digitally. Acid doesn't get to digital documents.
Yeah, right. Some people just like paper though.
But again, I do like paper, and you can definitely keep things stored in archival, safe settings. The college libraries will definitely be good resources to find out what's available for that, because the special collections, they're very aware of the best way to archive these records. Mylar will keep a document safe for 100 years if stored properly. Do y'all have any other questions?
I just like to say it's just so interesting to hear about your ancestors, like what they did for a living way back in 1700s and 1800s, and
It's
you know,
truly fascinating.
know more who you are because you know who your family was.
And you will find some scoundrels and some very interesting individuals, because, you know, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. That's who's written about. And they're not a reflection of who you are necessarily. I've found one scoundrel on my mother's side who was a great something uncle. Never had children, thank goodness, because his claim to fame is that he was shot in the stomach while working for some rather nasty individuals in the late 1800s that liked to run around in white robes and funny hats. I don't say it because I'm proud, I say it because it was true. I've got another individual, his claim to fame is I found this uncle in the census. He was living with his parents at age 12, which most of us do. But he was living there with his wife and newborn child.
Oh, jeez.
So at that point in the late 1800s, that game with the stick and the hoop, this child was not interested in that game.
Yeah.
He had other intentions in mind, and had started a family rather young. But you'll find the good, you'll find the bad, and they just make wonderful, wonderful, interesting stories.